Olá, boa tarde aqui na França, bom dia do Brasil. Estamos começando mais uma live no canal Papo de Defesa, um canal que tem como objetivo difundir a cultura de defesa, cultura democrática de defesa. E hoje a gente vai ter essa live, Fundamentalismo Cristão e a Política Internacional, com os nossos convidados Leonardo Pesci e Enzo Menucci. E essa live vai ser em inglês, para que o Leonardo possa participar. Então, eu vou passar para o inglês agora, mas se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta em português, pode escrever nos comentários que a gente traduz aqui. So, welcome to Papo de Defesa, a channel that discusses defense politics, international relations, international security, and strategic studies. It's a pleasure to be here today with Leonardo Pesci and Enzo Menucci to talk about Christian fundamentalism and international politics. As we know, recently we've seen in elections throughout the world how religion has been used, mobilized in political discourses. We've seen some extremists getting to power in Brazil, in the United States, in Europe, in Africa, everywhere. So we have a lot to talk about. I will only introduce our speakers, and then we can start. They will present their researchers. They are both in a PhD program right now. And so Leonardo Pesci is a PhD at the Faculty of Law of the Catholic University of Lille in France, holder of a master's degree in international security politics, and his research is situated at the intersection of international relations, law, sociology, and anthropology. Leonardo's PhD, Spiritualizing Sovereignty, Faith, Statehood, and the Secular Religious Boundaries Across Africa, investigates how faith-based movements in Kenya and Côte d'Ivoire are involved in politics, hence contesting and transforming notorious concepts of modern international politics, such as sovereignty and statehood. Thank you, Leo, for being with us today. And Enzo is also a PhD candidate and master in strategic studies of defense and security in the same institution as we from Papo de Defesa, in Universidade Federal Fluminense in Brazil. He's also a researcher in the Nexus Laboratory and the Laboratory for Studies on Brazilian Foreign Policy, both at the Federal University in Rio, in Niterói. And his research interests include Brazilian foreign policy, religion, far-right movements, political theory, and contemporary issues. So, thank you again. I will leave the floor to Leonardo, who will present his research agenda, will talk to us about his interests, and we can then continue the discussion. So, welcome again, Leo. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Gabriel, for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me. I'm also very pleased to meet Enzo. So as you briefly mentioned, I'm just about to start my PhD. We'll actually start next December, which means that I won't be able for the moment to provide you with any results of the research, but I will just introduce the research or why I think it's important. I will introduce the problematization and what I will do for the next years of my professional life. So first of all, my project, the genesis of this project starts with my master's degree dissertation. So throughout the master's at the Catholic University of Lille, I developed a strong interest in post-structuralist debate on state and sovereignty. And as my master's dissertation, I studied the Union of Islamic Courts, so an Islamic movement in Somalia active between 2004 and 2006. So from the results of this dissertation, there are two main things that I would like to highlight that are at the basis of the research that I will conduct today and that I will introduce you to. So the first one is that the movement saw like a state, to quote a famous book from James C. Scott, and basically they transformed from a grassroots organization active at the neighborhood level, and they structured themselves and bureaucratized. And that allowed them to be able to compete at the national level and promote and perform what are called sovereignty practices. So inherently governmental practices, despite not being a state or not being at the government. So this aspect open up to the second point that I would like to introduce, that there is a huge literature that displays the existence of formal and informal legal spaces that are within, beyond, adjacent, or sometimes at the place of the state. So these spaces are populated by a number of actors, including armed groups, religious movements, but also political entities and what the literature called political anomalies or experiments, such as de facto state, failed state, but also NGO. And again, I will mention once again religious movements. Now, this aspect of the multiplicity of legal orders within and beyond the state is very relevant, as it goes against the traditional idea of state sovereignty that we have in IR. So basically the supreme authority over people, territory, nation, population, with an external legitimacy recognition. Starting from the point of view of post-structuralist theories, the principle of state sovereignty, the main effect that this principle has is to divide political life in dichotomies, basically dividing what is inside from what is outside, the state from the non-state, the political from the non-political. Or I could continue, for instance, the secular with the religious, and that's what interests me. So these actors, and in this case, the religious movements that I'm studying, they have a hybrid and liminal nature, which means that they are not identifiable in one of the two categories, but they neither fall in one of the two categories, but they are actually residing in a third space that actually needs more investigation. So that being said, why religion? Why religious groups? Why especially evangelical groups in Kenya and Ivory Coast? So first of all, I would say that there are personal reasons beyond this choice. The fact that I come from a very Catholic country, which, however, is committed to secularism, as the same country that I'm taking as an example. So these two, I come from Italy, and throughout the entire history of Italy, it's hard, or it has been hard to understand where the state begins and when religious ends, and vice versa. So religion has structured the entire construction of the state, the entire structure of identities, but also governance, politics, and legislative production. That being said, other reasons are because I believe that the role of religion inside international relations is often overlooked exactly by this division that I highlighted before, because the Westphalian state is what it's constructed against the backdrop of religion, or at least in theory. Whereas in reality, it's much more complicated. So many states today, they commit to secularism because it's what modernity is supposed to be. However, in practice, this secularism is being compromised by the role of religion. And there's also another third reason that it's very contemporary and very relevant, both in the global south as in the north south, as in the global north, sorry. And this is because religious evangelical movements, that are the movements that I'm studying again, have acquired throughout the last decades a lot of importance in politics. For an example could be clearly Kenya and Ivory Coast, but also we can take the example of the US, in which, for instance, I'm thinking about evangelical and how they constitute an important ideological element into, for example, the MAGA movement. So that said, in few words, the objective of this PhD is to investigate the role of religious movement and evangelical orders in the constitution of the public sphere in Kenya and Ivory Coast. So I will construct two different fields. So I will map out the religious field and the state field and see how these two interact. And through this interaction, that can be cooperative, substitutive, or at the same time clashing, I will understand or try to understand how these interaction shapes these boundaries between secular and religious, and then how in turn these will change or contest and transform, this is the better term, the concept of state sovereignty, of the state and sovereignty. So very rapidly about the methodology. This work, as Gabriel previously mentioned, is based on a series of transdisciplinary concepts, starting from sociology. Is clearly identifiable that I will use Bourdieu's theories of field and its applications to IR, so the so-called practice turn, treating sovereignty as a set of practices. Despite that, also a lot of importance has anthropology here, because the main let's say one of the main concepts that are applied to this research are the one of hybridity from Baba and the one of liminality from Victor Turner. Now, it will be my job in these 4 years to understand which one of the two is more appropriate. But yeah, so basically, in brief, trying not to trivialize too much the two concepts, I would say that they both are applied to post-colonial studies to indicate individuals, that condition of individuals, states, psychologies, and so on, that it cannot be placed in any of the two categories. So they are neither one or the other, but they are the enmeshment, so the blend and the mix of the two. Similarly, I will also integrate critical legal scholarship, specifically the idea of legal pluralism. So what I was mentioning before, the existence of various normative spaces that interact with each other. Normally, the idea of legal pluralism is developed at the supranational level. So, for instance, with the proliferation of all the juridical institutions, the European Courts of Human Rights, or all the international institutions that are providing some kind of jurisdiction. I will try to apply this concept in the context of a state, analyzing informal private groups, and what is their authority and what is their interaction with law and so on. So the main, in few words, the main object of the project is to reconcile the concept of state sovereignty with the concept of legal pluralism, that in traditional IR theories, it's basically impossible. They are kind of antithetic. That being said, speaking about the methodology, I will employ different methods, different research methods. In the work can be divided into two parts. The first part would be a typography of the, as I already mentioned, of the political fields of Kenya and Ivory Coast, and the religious field in both states. Better, the evangelical religious field, because I have to place it in a more specific context. So that said, I will study the circulation of people, the circulation of knowledge, how the circulation of profiles. So I will study all the bibliography of the elites, of the political elites, but also of the religious elites, to see their political affiliation, their social affiliation, their familial, their religious, so their background, in few words. The second part will consist in fieldwork directly in the two countries, and will employ ethnographic methods, among which participant observation and semi-structured interviews. In this case, I will talk to elites again to understand how they perceive religion and how they perceive politics. So I will go to political elites and ask questions about religion, and vice versa. So I will go to religious elites and discuss about how they perceive politics, what is also the role in political life, and vice versa. I will attend a political rally to see, for instance, how religion is mobilized, because there is a literature that is actually already manifesting how the two of them are intertwined. And then I will visit religious events and see how we talk about politics there. Very rapidly, I hope I still have some time, the contributions that I think this work will bring are threefold. I think, first of all, this work will shed some light on how important is religion today in IR, not only in those states that are considered theocratics, they are the ones that have the most important in the literature for the moment, but also in those states that are committed to secularism. So I will try to understand how actually religion is structuring, I don't know, identities, governance, law production, and all the aspects, what I call sovereignty prerogatives, sovereignty performances, all the aspects of this political life. So constituting themselves the essence of the state. It will also contribute to African politics, literature on African politics, especially because it will give a comparative idea on governance and law production from a comparative point of view, to which I will also add an historical, in my opinion, an historical gaze, in the sense that I will also be able, since I will also be studying in the Faculty of Law, to analyze the colonial legacies and aspects and how they have influenced in today's production of law, governance, and so on. So it will give this kind of comparative overview of how religion, colonial legacies, and the interaction between religion and state has shaped governance and law in two different post-colonial states. One that was first under French rule, and one that was under British rule. Finally, again, a lot of work has already been done on how private entities, but also military companies, independentists, de facto state, failed states, and so on, contest and transform the concept of state sovereignty. However, less things have been written on how, for instance, religious movements in secular states are contesting the concept. So I'm over. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. And I will be very much happy to answer to any of your questions later.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. Really interesting how you are mobilizing the discussion from a sociological and anthropological perspective that was clear in your presentation, but also how you are problematizing the domestic international divide from international relations discipline, field of studies, which we are all connected here today, and our audience, I guess. But so, without further ado, I will give the floor to Enzo now. He will present his research and also talk about his interests in this field of study that we are talking here today. So Enzo, thank you very much again for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Leonardo. Good afternoon all to you all. I'm Enzo, as Gabriel said. I'm a PhD candidate here in Rio at the Fluminense Federal University, and getting a ride on Leonardo's way or explanation is it is a will as well. The consequence or the continuation of my master's dissertation and master's research that I'm seeking to. I'm taking a step backwards to understand and comprehend the meanings and the whys. Brazil has, as the rest of the world, has passing from some tough times in the institutional politics, and I was kind of trying to understand what was happening in the foreign affairs field, in the field of foreign affairs, after 2018, and like a change of paths, trying to coordinate Brazil's foreign policy through religious beliefs, or or based on exclusively political similarities. Then I chose to analyze the foreign policy of this period from the perspective of evangelical groups, as it took me some time to work on that, because Brazil, that's why I said I'm getting it right on Leonardo's. Brazil, like Italy, is a major Catholic country, and evangelicals kind of having so strong and highly influenced on the foreign policy. It's kind of a new thing here in Brazil. So I wanted, I had to comprehend that there is a major, profound changing in the Brazilian social organization, if we can say so. Then I looked in the master's dissertation exclusively on the foreign policy of this period, 2018 to 2022, on the UN's Human Rights Council, Foreign Affairs Ministry, speeches from the minister, and parliamentary debates, and kind of tracing this process of foreign policy. So now in the thesis, I wanted to expand it, and as understanding that it is a profound and complex movement of the civil society, Brazilian civil society. I took another step backwards to look exclusively at one church in a long perspective, not just from 18 to 22, and expansions to another country. What I'm talking about, I'm talking of I'm looking for the English version of it, Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, as we call in Brazil, Universal. A highly fluent church in Brazil that expanded. It initiated in the late 90s to the United States, to African countries, and South American countries. And I'm looking exclusively to Angola, taking in consideration that in 2020, in Angola, the Republic of Angola, the government of Angola, intervened in the country, in the church, and kind of passed or gave to local authorities the command, or the rule of the church, kind of sending the Brazilians back. As the Brazilian government and Brazilian authorities and the parliamentary, well, was kind of a fuss involved in this issue, and it kind of this religious but also political matter became an issue of foreign policy. So this is the main question. This is the main issue I'm analyzing at the thesis. So taking some methodology and theory matters in question. I'm taking some background of the foreign policy analysis, kind of subgenre, if we're talking about music, subfield or something like that of the international relations that exclusively analyze the foreign policy and its process from the modeling of the issue, understanding what the question is, what the issue is, to coordinating it to an agenda and implementing it. So exclusively looking to the foreign policy as an object in itself. Looking from the foreign policy analysis, FPA, and from Marxist background, from Gramsci, the idea of the integral state, that it means that unlike liberal theories that dissociate the state to the civil society, will have this integral state that connects both of them. Understanding that despite not having the civil society, not having the pen, as we say in Brazil, the pen to effectively sign the designations or decide the matters, they have highly influence on the state's decisions as being part of it. So what Gramsci understands that this difference is just too easy to the understanding, but they're all together. And the civil society contains the entrepreneurs, the economic elites, industrials, and so on, as well as the army and the churches, the religious belief organized. Then this is the kind of path I'm taking through theory and methodology to comprehend this movement into the foreign policy, Brazil's foreign policy in long perspective. As I said, the Universal Kingdom Church of the Kingdom of God has started to expand itself, aside from Brazil, from the 90s. This event, this issue happened in 2020, and in 2024, 23, I'm not quite sure now. I guess this was last year. We don't know yet how, but as the Brazilian sociology already understands the Universal Church as in market model, the Brazilian branch took over the Angola one once again, but we already don't know how and why. What was the politics in the side of this dynamics? So this is the perspective I'm taking. Sources, from on a matter of sources, I'm taking Brazilian foreign affairs ministry and parliamentary sources, as well as inside documents that were made, and debates major on mostly on the parliamentary. And matter of fact, this, as I said, we don't know yet what happened in 2024 to the Brazilian branch took over again. I'm taking news of the Ginsburg one when he's looking at the macro history perspective, the indiciary method to look on newspapers and things like that to comprehend and take in little details that could indicate a way to path on this source to trace this process in the foreign policy. So I'm 2 minutes ahead, but I would like to end it here, because I guess I just comprehend what is taken. I'm the second year of the thesis. I'm starting to write the theoretical chapter now, the theoretic chapter now. So this is the most organized idea until now, but I'm guess this difficult to arrange the sources, as well as Leonardo. I will have to take a field work to Angola to meet some people, to talk to some people, and try to organize this in a proper manner. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Enzo. So now we've seen Enzo's presentation from another perspective, from Brazilian foreign policy and foreign policy studies, foreign policy affairs, into the relationship between church and state, and also churches as non-state entities that have an influence in politics, institutional politics, in foreign policy. So now we have a better picture of how both research agendas are interconnected. Also in African countries, field studies, field cases, and many. So as Enzo was talking, at the end, you said how it's difficult, and it's also difficult to understand how, because it's a complex phenomenon. There, even before what is going on right now with evangelical churches, evangelical movements, and fundamentalism, it was already difficult to grasp the limits of state sovereignty, of politics and religion. But now I have this sense, now we have this sense that something is changing, something with globalization, with social media, technology, big tech companies. So we have more elements at play, which make it even more complex. But thank you, Enzo, and thank you, Leo, again. So I think we have a lot to talk about. Do you guys have a question to each other? Or maybe in our audience?
I have plenty of questions, but I'll give the floor first to some comments in the chat if there are some.
Not yet. Well, you can think about a question to each other or a commentary on each other's presentation. I think I already talked to both of you about this book I was reading last year. The author is Karen Armstrong, and the name of the book is in the name of God, and she talks about fundamentalism in the three major religions, monotheist religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And she's a historian, so she goes back to the 16th century when the Arabs were expelled from Spain, and Spain became a united kingdom, and then the Jews and the Arabs were moving around Europe, and in every movement, in every country, they were getting to, from the perspective of their own theology, some movements were getting really fundamentalist in the sense of getting back to the roots of religion. And sometimes, depending on how the relationship was being made in each country, France, for example, or Poland or the Netherlands, they were more connected to public policy, they were more connected to power, depending on if they were more persecuted or less persecuted, if they were trying to defend themselves. So it's a plural system of religious sectors, sections, factions, sorry, and government institutions and how they relate to each other. But she looks at it from the point of view of theology itself, how the theories, the philosophers, in a sense, from each of those religions, they were readapting the theological philosophy according to the political context. Sometimes working more directly with the governments in each country, other times recluded into the religious sphere. So in the beginning of the book, she talks a lot about the difference between this scientific development, scientific reasoning that was being developed in the 16th century, and now this thing we call science, and on the other hand, the theological, mythological reasoning language, which is another thing. They are different, they are connected. So since we are talking about Christian fundamentalism, how do you guys see Christian fundamentalism in the sense of getting back to the roots of Christianity? Meaning, sometimes we saw this in Brazil, right, Enzo? Some politicians, some religious leaders wanting, like in the support of Israel, for example, how this somehow represented a movement going back to the roots of religion. And also, why do you think fundamentalism is on the rise in the world, in Brazil, in Kenya, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Italy? I know it's a tricky question, but there are many elements in this analysis, but how do you guys see this? What is Christian fundamentalism for you guys, and why do you think it's in a rise right now?
You want to start?
Go, please. Wait, sorry.
Okay. You said you were reading Ken Armstrong, In the Name of God. I just remember I had the similar one in here. She's incredible. She has this capacity of comprehending the major Abrahamic religions in a row. Well, how do you see fundamentalism in the matter of getting back to the roots, and why it's on the rise, and what I understand as fundamentalism? I guess Leonardo can explain it well better than I, but I think understood in my master's is that what we call Christian fundamentalism was a movement in the late centuries, early 1910s, 1920s. I guess it was earlier, in 1905, 1915. This period in the United States, the first time it was comprehended in a term like that, a concept like that, from evangelicals from the Northern Baptist Convention, that produced a series of pamphlets or of booklets called the Fundamentals. It was a series of pamphlets that kind of positioned the church against this movements understood as profoundly modern movements, as well as liberalism, but also communism, feminism, atheism, and what it evoked for was a back to the roots, a back to the fundamentals. So now we must read the words from the book as they are written. We have to be literal on this. So we're back into the fundamentals. From some time, it had no major impact on the public, on public debate. Also because it didn't want to be intoxicated to the public debate. So politics is one of these spaces where the liberals and the communists are. So we don't mess with it. The great different moment from the fundamentalists were already in the late 80s in the United States with Ronald Reagan and the reemergence of these thoughts now remanaged from, as you said, these beliefs are always there's no pure religion, there's no pure belief. This is despite what one's belief are, the role of beliefs and the role of religion are essentially a social phenomenon. So it is in accordance with its time and its social necessities, as we say. So these fundamentals are remanaged, and we could call this the new fundamentalists. Majorly, they rearrange themselves in the Republican Party, what we call the major majority. They have a great influence on Ronald Reagan's. And one thing that is important is that it is, despite not liking the modernist movements, they are profoundly modern because they position themselves against the other. The figure of the self and the other are very important in this. And what happens in Ronald Reagan's neo-fundamentalist influence? The accordance of the religion and the Christian belief of this profoundly Christian country that is the United States against communism, the symbolism of evil, and so on. As we say, we're talking about the late 80s, and some political issues are happening in the 80s And it was happening in the 80s in South America as this, not a consequence, I would say, but variables that just go through and go together. Sometimes they cross, but not this casuality, not casuality, this consequential, not necessarily consequential process, but they happen. We're having the dictatorships in Brazil and in South America and so on. They're opening themselves. Brazil's case in 85, and we start to see this movement that I talked before, of this profound changing in the Brazilian society that identified itself as a Catholic country. Now we could say that, despite most Brazilians is still Catholic, we will be more accurate. We say that is a Christian country, not Catholic anymore. And this process are in the highly moment in the late 80s, 90s. And why I was talking about the American, the connection is very important on the, I would say, from 1918 to 2018 to 2022, Jair Bolsonaro's government, that is highly influenced by this historic moment of the American politics in the late 80s, and obviously Trump, but mostly Reagan's politics, including economic politics, but also how to say, the morality of this politics. So the same backgrounds, you access are very similar, and the people are closely similar,
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see fundamentalism in the matter of getting back to the roots? It is in the central and the fundamental of it. It is back to the roots, but it's also, as we said, it is in profoundly dialogue with its moment. So
Mm-hmm.
it is in this course is a getting back to the roots, getting back to the fundamentals. But in a matter of fact, it is just the moment we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess partly of it, this is why it's on the rise, because it is not past, it's present. Yeah. So I guess it's.
Thank you, Enzo. Leonardo?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Enzo was saying, and my answer to your question will be very more brief. Is that I cannot see the two questions separated. So why we are getting back to Christian fundamentalism and why it's on the rise today, in the sense that it's part of a bigger. It's also my opinion because I haven't read on it yet, but. It's part of a social encounter from people, population, believers, and politics as well. So I'm thinking about, for instance, the way in which religion is being mobilized, like the religious discourse is being mobilized throughout political rallies, throughout messages. And so it's also very easy that this community keep alimenting themselves because they create their own kind of bubble, right? Their own social reality. Like we think about social media, and it's easy to get more and more radicalized, to be closer and closer in their circle, which brings to more polarization. Plus, I think that our political, I mean, I wouldn't like to overgeneralize, but the political situation in which we can assist it throughout all the globe. So with the rise, for instance, of populist movements, well, populist movements are very great in mobilized religion discourse, and throughout and that's my kind of approach, throughout all the existence of the state system, religion has been a fundamental engine, for instance, for identity construction. And this identity construction, then it's also what shapes. So today we are talking that in our states we are secularist, but at the same time, when I speak to people, what I hear is that no, we are a Christian country. And then I'm like, yes, but so there is something always more that we are not really grasping, I think. And that it's also kind of the engine, and that's why it's also very much linked to the religion today, because it's part of the polarization of the political systems and so on. So yeah, and I fully agree with Enzo once again that it's not really possible today to separate why we are going back to the current political situation. So it's not really a going back, but it's rather being on the moment, like it's the momentum, and we can see these in many aspects, not only on fundamentalists. Maybe we can see also in normal religious groups.
Yeah. So I just want to say that here today we are talking about Christian fundamentalism and not Jewish fundamentalism or Islamic fundamentalism or any other religious fundamentalism, because we have here today two guests, two speakers that are actually studying Christian fundamentalism, and also because it's a topic to be studied. It is a topic to be investigated, not only in academic fields, but in general. But sure, we could also have discussions on Islamic fundamentalism, which is also a hot topic more recently. So, guys, did you think of, do you want to comment? Do you have any final comments?
I have a very small question for Enzo. First of all, thank you very much. I didn't have the time before for your presentation. I think it's very fascinating, especially with the theory of the state. What's the name again? The theory of Gramsci, the one that you mentioned about the
integral state.
Integral state. That's very fascinating. Yeah, and I think it really relates to also to what I'm doing in a certain sense, from another perspective, for maybe probably more economic. But yeah, so I just wondered very rapidly, what is today the relation between the Brazilian political sector, government, and evangelical churches, or church, the one that you analyzed? So in which terms they are, how they interact, what are the political narratives, and what are the political narratives as well, if you have some data on that, internal of evangelicals towards public policy, governments, and so on. It's more of a curiosity than anything else.
Thank you for your question, Leonardo. As I said, this moment from 2018 to 2022 was exceptional, as we could call it. But as the former president and now actual president Lula became to power, this relation, unlikely we could thought it was not so different. It was obviously different from what it was in this period, but there was no gap between them. And I think this is this happens in this perspective, as we're not so close, we're not brothers, like you were with the last government administration, but we're close. And I think this is a symptom, not a symptom, this seems a bad word for it, but is a consequence of this profound movement in the Brazilian social movement, as changing its religion. This church, I told you guys, the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, is a very pragmatic church. And in fact, in the first time they had a representation in the administrative structure, as we could call it, public administration, with the ministry, was in the Dilma Rousseff's administration. Dilma was like how we could call it, was she's from the same party as Lula. So this group just became a very and an unavoidable group in the Brazilian politics, domestic politics. And I think this is the key I'm interested, because it is a social group as any other, and it has its influences as any other. So it's kind of unavoidable. So thank you.
Yeah, and
thank you. Sorry, Gabriel, just wanted to thank Enzo for his answer.
And what we've seen recently is representatives of the church, this church and other churches as well, being elected, being involved in institutional politics as parliamentary, not only the federal level, but also state and municipal levels. And or even if they are not officially connected to any church, what we see, like it's permanent, I guess. It's always been like that, I guess. Is the politicians using religious discourse as a form of legitimization, right? As a form of getting the public's approval from the start. Like even the Bolsonaro's slogan, God, family, and the patria, la patria. Who would be against God, right? So, but which God specifically is he bringing to the political discourse and to the political agenda? So it gets really tricky when, I mean, you guys know better than me. But Leo, could you talk a little bit about the difference between Kenya and Ivory Coast? Because one is more Catholic, the other is more evangelical.
Yeah.
How do you see any similarity in the evangelical part to what Enzo presented here?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for the question. This is very interesting. So first of all, I will just say why I chose them. I chose Kenya and Ivory Coast because the movements there are on the rise, and they are on the rise since long time. So it's more of an established thing. Kenya has a 40% around population of evangelicals, among which evangelical movements there are becoming a bit more fundamentalist, let's put it this way. Or no, let's take a step back. So out of this 40%, for instance, they started to have a very important political influence. And this is because the current president, whose name is William Ruto, for the first time in the history of the country, has mobilized religion, and he's the very first evangelical president. And from the literature, from what I've witnessed so far, there has been some kind of a process in which political rallies, political events, political campaigns have become more and more religionized. So in the sense, religion has become an integral part of everything: political campaigns, legislative production. And for instance, this had a huge influence on, as I was saying, on electoral campaigns. I wanted to say something, but I forgot. I will go back at it later. On the contrary, so Côte d'Ivoire is a more heterogeneous country in terms of religion, with 40% of Muslim population, 30% more or less Christian, among which Catholic and evangelicals, and another great 30% of animists, and so on. So in this second case, what really was interesting for me is that, first of all, there had already been problems, social unrest related to politics and religion. So after the end of the colonization period, so with the beginning of the post-colonial state, there have been three major presidents in Côte d'Ivoire. So the first one, Boigny, was his name. He mobilized more. I mean, he mobilized. I should be careful, but he was much more into Christian Catholic religion, without really preventing himself from favoritizing, easing the role of Catholic in public society. Similarly, there has been electoral crisis due to his succession, because he remained in government for a long time. And the following leader, so his name was Gabgo, and he was professed and as an evangelical. So despite him trying for long, and that's what I'm trying to focus on in terms of my research, but then there is much more, of course. So in terms of this period from 2000 to 2011 maximum, despite him trying to say that there was no religious tie between him and his faith, in reality, we could witness that there was actually an appointment of people in charge, public administration, allocation of funding, and all this kind of thing that favoritized his religious faith. So that being said, however, my real interest in the Ivory Coast case is that it's a state that has had three different head of states with three different religions. So because the current president, Alexandre Ottawa, sorry for the pronunciation, it's completely wrong. Instead, he's Muslim, and he's also using religion. He's mobilizing religion in a certain way, and this throughout time has caused not little problems. So in the sense that throughout electoral processes, electoral campaign, this has always been the topic of religion has always been a topic of a hot one. So that's the interest mainly. And then I will locate it more on the case of evangelical studies, but it's interesting anyways to give a kind of genealogical point of view of how the three different presidents have mobilized and used religion, and how and vice versa. So how religion has been involved in the construction of the public sector, and how this has shaped, again, the identity, the governance, and so on. Whereas the case of Kenya, once again, and then I will conclude, is basically the first country in which now evangelical movements are deeply embedded in political life, like deeply. So it's clearly an interest.
Yeah, so there is something new going on.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And so if in the first case, for instance, it's current, it's actual, and I will be able to witness it with my eyes, then it will, in the second case, or in the case of Côte d'Ivoire, I will be more concentrated on some historical genealogy and see the differences between the three and how the three religions interact. Yeah.
Enzo, any final remarks?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions to Leonardo, but we guess we can discuss it later. But I would thank you for the invitation. As you said, we're talking about Christian fundamentalism in here, and I'm thankful for this invitation and this meeting, because often when we're talking about international relations and in international relations, when they talk about fundamentalism, it's quite common. Usually people think about Islamic or Muslim fundamentalism, and which indicates what Leonardo was said, in the sense this difference, or this pseudo difference between the secular and the religious fields, which indicates from which perspective we're looking at. So I'm very thankful for this meeting and this opportunity to show my research and this ongoing research. I'm not so confident until now, and I'm very thankful also. It was a pleasure to meet Leonardo and his research, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo. Final remarks?
Yeah, I also join in the thanking moments. So thank you, Enzo and Gabriel, for the invitation. It was very fun, and I think we have a lot of points in common. And yeah, why not keep talking? And I would also be very interested in reading some of your works, if you have already published, if you will, if you need as well. Again, I'm just at the beginning of the PhD, so unfortunately I was not able really to enter in many details. But yeah, it's also giving me a lot of confidence, because I see that the topic makes sense. It's also a topic that I developed with my research. It took almost 1 year. So it's really pleasant to know that it makes sense, and it's already embedded in some kind of community through a different approach, but still that's kind of the sense. So thank you again. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Enzo.
Thank you. I hope, maybe we could have a second session when you guys are finishing the thesis, and you can show the results for our audience, and we can see where you have come so far and what will be the future problems that we are going to see. Yeah, so I thank you guys, thank you very much, and see you soon. Obrigado a todos aí da audiência e até a próxima.